So we're here today with Marcus Villig, who is the founder of Taxify, 21 years old. We're here in Estonia. My first question to you, Marcus, is how did you came up with the idea of setting up a business like Taxify?
I'd say that I've actually been looking for a business idea or a great product I could build since I was about 14. So I had tested different projects. I was looking at what is scalable, efficient, and something that's really gonna make a big impact. And actually, I came up with the idea for Taxify thanks to my brother, who was in a pretty coincidentally, he was in Ukraine, in Kiev, and he was taking a taxi there, and it was ordered via an SMS. And we saw it was a nice idea, but it was a bit outdated. So we figured, let's take it to the next step. Let's take this SMS-based system and build it on smartphones. And that's how the idea started about 2.5 years ago in Tallin.
So you were 19, almost 19 when you started with this initiative.
Yeah.
And so you came up with the idea. What was your first step to really...
I'd say that actually looking back, I actually did it pretty like smartly. So first of all I tested the consumer side, made just an easy survey on the web. How satisfied are you with the taxis in Tallinn? Do you see that there's room for improvement? Would you use a product like this? Actually it blew up, so we had like 700 people respond to the survey, all of them saying it's a really good idea. Second step, I figured I should talk to the taxi drivers, see how interested they are. That was a bit more tricky. So I mean, after school, pretty much I just went on the street to the taxi stands, talked to 10 guys. 9 of them said I'm an idiot, and one of them said okay, maybe. So after doing that for 4 months, I had enough drivers signed up. I saw that we had consumer demand, so I started working on the prototype.
But you didn't have a system yet, so you only had an idea or concept.
Yeah, so I was pretty much selling an idea to them.
Okay, and but you spent quite a while in sort of market research, and you said you did a survey. Did you use an existing tool for that, like SurveyMonkey?
Just Google Docs.
Just Google Docs. Yeah. So you use available technology to get more insights in a problem or situation.
So I'd say pretty much I invested nothing besides my own time just to in the first weeks to gather some intel and see if there's actually any traction I could get.
Okay, and after that, well, you realized that you had something which inspired taxi drivers to give their commitment to you.
Yeah.
But then the next step is building a system that combined the needs of taxi drivers and also sort of commercial idea behind it. So what was the next step?
So I mean, the hardest part was that I didn't know how to build any mobile applications myself. So I had some software development experience, but far from it to actually make a nice product. So I figured that we should go to some, as cheap as possible, some like freelance or a small agency, let them build a prototype, and if it takes off, then probably we try to raise some funding. So the problem was we needed to get around 10,000 euros for the prototype. As a student, I had no money whatsoever, so I started to try to loan this money from somewhere. So at the end of the day, my parents had put aside some money that was meant for my university. And they said, like, if you're just gonna spend it, then you have to work full time when you're at the university. And I said, like, after 2 minutes of thinking, yeah, I think it's gonna be worth it. So I just took the money, whatever I could, also loaned some from my brother, and pretty much I started working on the prototype.
So your first investors were your parents?
Yeah, and my brother.
And your brother?
Yeah.
But they really trusted you then in your capacity, your knowledge, and your capabilities, or was it more based because you were their son? And
I think that they'd seen that I've been already working on quite a lot of projects, and I was just so much into it that they thought that maybe he's gonna pull it off. So if it doesn't pull off, then he just needs to work and earn the money from somewhere. So I didn't think that they saw like a big risk there. So
one of the biggest challenges of startups in the Netherlands, especially talking to a lot of startups in the Netherlands, is get funding. And your advice, would your advice be then to, for instance, startups who are watching this video right now, to say, well, go to your family and see whether you can get some money over there, or do you have any tips or tricks?
I think that actually in most of the business you don't need to build out anything to test the idea. So I think that by the time when you actually need to commit money, you can be pretty certain that there's a need for it. So by the time I decided to invest money, we already had hundreds of people signed up who wanted to use the service. We had about 100 drivers signed up. So pretty much I just did all the work myself afterwards that as well. I did all the designs for the app, etc. So actually I didn't need to invest any money before I had everything, the concept ready and the customers ready. So by that time it was pretty easy to just put in the money, build a prototype. Or if I had gone to investors with this data, I could have also pretty easily probably raised the money. So
And the third step, what was this third step of the product? Because okay, so you went to somebody who could build the system, and
Yeah.
you have your idea, and being in communications, if you tell an idea to somebody, makes his own idea behind it and provides a product, and you have to check whether it
Yes.
follows your idea. So what happened then?
I think the good part was that by the time I actually went to talk about the idea, I had all the actual every screenshot, pretty much all the designs done exactly as they were gonna be. So pretty much I just went there and said like these are the screenshots, this is the flow, how it's gonna work, just build it exactly like that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards I just needed to test if it actually matches my description. So
Did you directly focus on building an app, or
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I saw that like this is only gonna work on mobile, so I realized that people don't want to order a taxi through like a mobile browser or desktop, and that's not gonna work. So
being young, experience from my youth, I had some role models. Did you have a role model that gave you ideas or inspiration for those steps?
I'd say that I didn't have like a very specific role model. So I mean, I'm of course following like whatever the biggest entrepreneurs are in the world. I read their stories how they became successful. So I got some tips from there, but I wouldn't say that I have like some one person I see as like really my idol or something like that.
And okay, so is it also a sort of characteristic of the people of your age at the moment that the information flow available is immense, and you can cherry pick whatever you want and see and learn from that and use that as
Yeah, sure. I think like in the first 6 months of building the company, I was just every day reading at least 2-3 hours of materials about everything. So just really absorbing the data, like how to do marketing, how to build a company, how to build an app, what's good design in the app or not. So I think that was like the biggest thing that actually gave me the good benefit why I think it succeeded. So just really learning, putting in the hours and learning about everything. So yeah, I mean, by the time we started hiring first people, I actually saw that like I had never done marketing myself, but when we were hiring a marketing person, I could really talk to them on the same level. I could understand what they were talking about because I had spent hours and hours reading about it. So yeah.
And looking at the process and hear you telling this story, it seems rather flawless and easy. First step, second step, some investment from your parents. Being young, I can imagine some uncertainties. And what gave you the most headache at that time when you started this?
I think that I had like the benefit that I didn't know how hard it's gonna be, so I just like went full in, and by the time the problem started coming up, I had no way of backing out, so I just needed to hustle through it or give up.
You could say that you're being naive was your advantage at that time.
Yeah, so I mean, by the time we started having first problems, like when we launched the product, and I mean the app just completely sucked. People were complaining it didn't work. We didn't actually have any drivers online because many months had passed, and they were saying I have completely forgotten about it, and I'm not working. So we didn't have a working technical side. We didn't have any drivers, and on media we had stated that we are live. So we had like hundreds of bad errors, and people were complaining. So I needed to somehow solve it in a week or two, otherwise the whole business is gonna be shut down.
Yeah.
So what I did, I just every day went on the street like crazy, hired taxi drivers, like putting in like I don't know 5 to 10 hours a day. And when I didn't do that, I was just building the prototype. So I actually started like learning mobile development myself and started to fix it. So I mean, when I saw that nothing else is gonna work, I just needed to put in the hours and make it work. So
okay. So is it something you could advise current startups when they're at the point that they don't believe in themselves anymore? It's just keep going?
Yeah, pretty much I'd say so. I mean, to a certain extent. So I mean, I think every founder in that sense should understand what are their own limits and when it's time to give up or not. And I think that in our case, I saw that the problem wasn't in the case that the idea was bad. It was just I had bad execution. So the product wasn't good enough, and the drivers weren't there. So I just saw that these are two problems I can solve. If I solve it and then it fails, then something is wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, until you have an obvious problem to solve, just solve it and see what happens.
Yeah. If we take a step forward in time, in here and now, and we're talking about Taxify and where Taxify is now, you're currently operating in how many countries?
So currently we're operating in Finland, all the Baltic states, Belarus, and the Netherlands. And then we have a couple of bigger clients around the world from like US and Georgia and Australia, South Africa. So these are more just taxi companies who have approached us.
Did you imagine to have this at this moment in multiple countries when you started going through Tallin, asking taxi drivers if they wanted to use this app. I mean, did you already had an international focus in mind?
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, definitely. I mean, my goal from the beginning was to build something with a big impact, and since Estonia is so small, we really can't have a big impact here. So from the beginning, I was already thinking about all the sites that's gonna come up, like how is this system scalable from the architecture side, how is the localizations with the language, how are like the different models in the app, like how easily can we adjust them to different countries. So pretty much like I had this focus in mind, which later on saved us a lot of time.
Interesting, interesting. And being a founder of this company, with how many people do work at Taxify?
So currently it's about 30.
30 people working, and you're 21. And how does it work for you managing 30 people in an international operating company?
I'd say we have a really good team with a lot of experience. So they are taking a lot off my shoulders. So mainly I'm just really focused on more putting the strategy in the direction and the product, and most of the management stuff is handled by the small team. So we try to keep it like as lean as possible.
Is that difficult? To let others work with your concept and your ideas and
I think it's definitely difficult in the beginning, but it's not that hard to get used to it. So I mean, if you have good people who have already built big scalable products before, then they're pretty much thinking the same way I'm thinking. So it's not that hard to communicate the vision.
It's an interesting question. How do you get good people at a startup?
You have to have a really cool idea that they believe in. So I mean, we have examples, guys from Skype who were making a ton more money than they are here, but they just really like the idea, they like the concept, and they really believe in it. So I think that's the main thing that drives actually passion and work.
And how did you persuade them? Just with your idea, you as a personality telling about your idea? Did you use presentations, or did you?
I think it was mostly about, first of all, I think like the brand we have in Estonia. So I think the like overall usability we have in the country and penetration is really big. So people like about it, to talk about the product often, and so that's how they came in. And when they were already at the interview, then it was just pretty much my job to sell the company, why it's a really cool idea, why you should join. So
interesting. And last question, what would be your advice to startups and people who are thinking about a concept or idea to set up a business? What would your advice be to the viewers of this video?
I think get started sooner than later. So I mean, now looking back, I am thinking like, damn, why didn't I start this when I was 16? So I think that actually getting started is not that hard as it seems. So you can do a lot of things that doesn't cost you anything. You can validate the idea, and if you see it takes off, then invest more time. If it doesn't, just shut it down and you didn't lose much, just some of your own time. So I think just get started as soon as possible.
Okay, well, thank you very much for these insights, Marcus Villig from Taxify.